Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger of Virginia. She is a former CIA officer. Congresswoman, thanks for being here. It's good to see you. Let's talk first about those threats to the FBI, threats to the IRS now, other agencies that, frankly, some of your colleagues in the United States Congress have put in harm's way. We heard this man who was killed in Ohio who went to a field office in Cincinnati because of what he'd heard about the FBI searching Mar-a-Lago, that they were out to get the president and everything else. Have you talked to any of your colleagues about turning down some of the rhetoric, particularly some of it based in conspiracy theories?
Well, I wanted to first take a minute to reflect on that video, the number of law enforcement officers whose lives were in danger because one man was spun up in anger and hate, and the conspiracies that you mentioned. In my conversations with my colleagues, I've been very clear in the danger that exists when people are so willing to lean into lies, like the lie of 87,000 armed IRS agents. That is not real. That is not true. And yet we see members of Congress and people who want to head to Congress who are willing to call the FBI names, accuse them of being corrupt, all for political gain. In fact, in our race, my opponent sent out a fundraising email calling the FBI corrupt, calling them deep state. It is disrespectful, it is a lie, it is conspiratorial, and two things either exist. Either members of Congress and some who wish to go to the halls of Congress actually believe these lies themselves, or they are willing to put the lives of the men and women in law enforcement, it was FBI, it was local police, it was sheriffs, it was state police, in that video you just showed, by pushing these lies either to fund their campaigns or to curry favor with some voters. It's dangerous, and it has to stop.
Congresswoman Spanberger, we just spoke with Representative-elect Pat Ryan, who won a true swing district here in New York State. And he's on the ballot again, and he'll be running in November, as you are on the ballot in November. And he was talking about the significance in terms of voter energy having to do with the Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade. But also, he mentioned the fact that when he's out, what he hears a lot of people talking about are two elements: trust in government and the fact that democracy seems to be in peril. And I'm wondering, in your travels around your district, what do you hear on those two issues, if you hear anything at all about them? Absolutely.
And I heard the interview with Congressman-elect Ryan, and he's spot on. The deficit of trust, the cynicism that exists. I hear from voters challenges facing their lives, economic issues, health-related issues, a concern that maybe people just don't care, and the cynicism that lawmakers are not focused on their constituents, and a lack of trust that people on Capitol Hill or people in Richmond here in Virginia or at our Capitol or anywhere else, that they're just not focused on the needs of the people that they serve. And it's that deficit of trust that I think creates the fertile ground for conspiracies. It's the deficit of trust that creates fertile ground for people to turn against our system and against democracy. And there are multiple steps we can take. I'm leading the bipartisan effort to ban lawmakers from being able to buy or sell stocks, individual stocks. It seems like a simple thing. But when there is headline after headline about members of Congress who are making money on this stock or that stock related to the war or the pandemic or any other thing that we might be being briefed on, when I'm around my district, people say, oh, of course, people are in it for themselves. And so this legislation that we are moving forward and we want to vote on is about a tiny little step forward in affirming to voters, you can trust me because I'm in this work to support my constituents and not my stock portfolio. In any place where we can show up, where we can listen, where we can advocate for the issues, hyper-local and national, and take steps to ensure that people realize and know and see that we are working for our constituents and not ourselves. That is how we do the building block, foundational work of strengthening our democracy, strengthening our system, and frankly, strengthening our communities that have been hurting for the past few years.
Congresswoman Spanberger, as you outlined that part of the distrust that has been building up among some of your constituents, is there also a sense that you're getting that people are concerned about the very structure of government, of our democracy, is at risk. When you look at the video of the attempt there at the field office in Cincinnati, the FBI, do you get a sense that people want to see some aggressive way that those that are in charge of government now would stop those that have really destabilized government itself? I mean, January 6th was the obvious example. But are you sensing people are wondering, can we hold on to government and to this democracy as we've known it, or at least as it was preached to us, whether we ever got all the way there or not? Is this instability something you're hearing?
Absolutely. Certainly, voters will frequently talk to me about the images, what they saw on January 6th on their televisions. And I was among the lawmakers who were in the House chamber as that attack ensued. I speak frequently about the bravery of the Capitol police officers and the Metropolitan police officers who saved the day, saved that building, saved everybody inside, and safeguarded our democracy for that time. And so the unease and the concern about our democracy, the need for certain reforms, access to voting rights, ensuring that people's voices really are heard at the ballot box. Here in Virginia, under the prior gubernatorial administration and our state legislature, we put in place significant reforms, expanding access to the ballot, ensuring voters' ability to vote, having 45 days of early voting. So here in Virginia, we're in this interesting place where we see the steps forward that can be made to affirm that we want our citizenry to vote, that vote is important. It's their role in democracy. It's their responsibility as part of our system. But we see that at the federal level, even though the House passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, we couldn't move it in the United States Senate. And so there is a clear contrast between what we know is possible, what has benefited, be it the local truck driver. I heard this at the polls in 2020. A truck driver said, I'm a truck driver. I get my route every morning and every Tuesday of election day, year after year. I never know whether or not I'm going to be able to vote. It depends on how long my route is. But now that we have early voting, I can always vote on a Saturday, never have to worry. I'll always know my vote is heard. And so looking at the federal level, the fact that the Senate did not allow us to move forward with the Voting Rights Act, that is an area of consternation. And I think it makes people want to see continued forward movement. Of course, I'm a co-sponsor, voted for the legislation twice, and will continue to work to see its final passage and movement to the president's desk. But so many of the places where we can be strengthening the system, some of it is through legislation like the Voting Rights Act, ensuring that people's votes really are their voices in our democracy, but also ensuring that we, legislators, are doing the hard work of listening and being wholly responsive. And frankly, as Congressman-elect Ryan mentioned, the Inflation Reduction Act, lowering the cost of prescription drugs. I've been hearing about the cost of prescription drugs, particularly from seniors, since I first was elected in 2018. The idea that we are taking forward steps to combat climate change, that is something I've been hearing about since I was first elected in 2018. The fact that we're bringing farmers and producers to the table in our efforts to sequester carbon and fight climate change and invest in rural and agricultural communities, the fact that we're taking meaningful steps forward to stop gun violence in our communities and to recognize the needs of our communities in terms of ongoing mental health crises. These are successes that we've had. I was just out touring bridges and roads that are going to be getting significant investments in our district because of the infrastructure bill that we passed last year and the president signed last year. So we are doing that work of uniting the reality of the good work we're doing on Capitol Hill, the bills going to the president's desk, and the meaning that they have back home in our communities.
Congresswoman, big news out of the White House yesterday, student loan relief for some 43 million Americans that will go a long way to helping them get out from under that burden, but also criticized Nancy Pelosi a year ago, said the president didn't even have the power to do that. We'll see what the courts say about it. Some say it will contribute to inflation, including some of President Obama's economic advisors. Others saying it's just immoral to make people who didn't take out loans pay off the loans of people who did. Where are you on this issue?
Well, across my district, I have heard all of those opinions voiced by constituents and the people that I represent. Really notably, there has been ebbs and flows in information that we have had as it was initially discussed in the public that this was something that this executive order was something that the Biden administration was considering. There's a lack of clarity in terms of this bumpy road to getting here. I'm getting a lot of constituent questions about what this executive order actually means. But central for me is moving forward. This is a step that is a Band-Aid step, a point-in-time step. It impacts millions of Americans, but there are families across the country that are dropping their kids off at school, at universities this week. We aren't yet contending with the root issue, which is the affordability crisis of higher education in our country. That is something that we all need to be focused on, or we'll continue to be facing the challenge of generation after generation continuing to contend with that. It's also important that we continue to have conversations about investing in apprenticeship programs, skilled labor programs, and all of the phenomenal and absolutely vital jobs that community members hold, many of which also don't require a four-year degree.
So do you believe this is a good step toward helping with that? $10,000 for people who took out federal student loans, $20,000 for people with Pell Grant loans?
I think there are certainly benefits to many individuals, to communities, to the ability to invest. But I don't want the conversation to end here, because we have to get at the issue of affordability, and we have to make sure that we're not constantly having a conversation every few years as to whether or not this is the step that the government should take, because that is not sustainable, and that should not be our goal. Our goal needs to be to get at the root cause of the college affordability crisis and moving forward, ensure that community members, whether they go to college, don't go to college, have family-sustaining jobs, can make investments, can buy homes if they choose to do that, and can be a part of the economic drive in our communities, making investments in locally and within the economy, both in their communities and across the country.
Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger of Virginia. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.